We're almost out of time here today, but before we go, I want to catch up with some of the new head coaches around the league here. There were 9 coaching changes since the end of last season. There's a list of them there. So, Coach Fizz, what's the biggest obstacle, as we tackle a few of these, facing Steve Nash in his first season with the Nets?
Well, I think first off is really making them understand championship expectations. Luckily, he's got a couple of champions there that can help him manage that. But I also think managing the egos, keeping everybody's ego in check is going to be a huge deal. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, can he keep these guys playing at a high level, even though he's got some guys coming back off of injury, and still putting them in position to have home court advantage?
Amin?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, how do you balance 2 guys who like to play a certain way with a different style that'll help everybody else on the team? And being able to manage that, as Coach said, manage those egos. You let them do what they do, but also get them to buy into something that's bigger than themselves. And I think the reason why Steve got this job over several other deserving candidates was because he's got a different personality, and he can connect with those guys on a level that not many people in the world can. He is a former 2-time MVP, and they would respect his opinions. So part and parcel of that is selling them on things that maybe they wouldn't have bought from someone else. And I think that's the biggest obstacle that Steve's got to face in his first season.
I just think that dealing with the rotation, I think, will be a thing, right? And just kind of managing that aspect and those expectations. But to your point, Amin and Fizz, he's a guy that was so well respected during his time and certainly after his time that I think that will be an adjustment because it'll just be part of the regular everyday stuff that he's got to do. Right. But I think he'll be able to handle it pretty well. All right, next up, Amin, what's the biggest obstacle facing Stan Van Gundy with the Pelicans?
Well, I think we talked about a little bit earlier with Zion is managing his health and his weight and his conditioning. And these are questions that we are going to ask repeatedly throughout the first few years of this guy's career. Look, when he was healthy and he was playing last year, Alvin Gentry looked like a pretty good coach too. And so, it's hard to win games when your best talent is not available. And Zion played, as I said, barely 20 games last year. Stan's got to find a way to keep him motivated, keep him in good condition, and also not burning him out.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I do think that Stan has a system and a formula for doing that. I mean, he comes from the Heat culture where they thrive on getting guys in great condition. And so I think Zion will buy into that because Stan is going to explain it to him in a way that really makes him understand the why and how this really is going to help him long term over the course of his career. But the other thing I think the really big challenge is getting these young guys to play elite level defense and really be committed and tied together and playing at a level that will get them in the playoffs and get them over the hump every single night. We'll see if they can do that. Stan's a defensive coach. We know that he can bring that out of guys.
Yeah, look, I think that defense is certainly something that he'll have to keep an eye on. I think that they, at times, miss the requisite amount of shooting. I mean, I know JJ's on that roster, but
right, enough.
But beyond that, I think that there's some questions there potentially as far as their shooting and how Stan kind of manages that aspect of it as far as making sure the spacing is right. I
Absolutely.
think that'll be on his plate. And finally, Coach Fizz, what's the biggest obstacle facing Tom Thibodeau in his first season with the Knicks?
You know what, I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be a process. As Tibbs institutes a top-notch defense and starts to build those great defensive habits, I think it's going to be the Knicks putting the right pieces around Tibbs that he can coach and push to that level that'll get the Knicks over the hump. But I think ultimately Tibbs has got to hammer home what means the most to him, which I know him. He is a defensive-minded guy. He's going to try to get the habits and get that team playing at a consistent level defensively, understanding how important that is to them becoming a better basketball team.
George, Ian O'Connor wrote an excellent piece for ESPN.com that came out today where he talks about Parcells and Tom Coughlin and Joe Girardi, other New York coaches who had to learn, I'm not going to compromise who I am in terms of being demanding and demanding excellence, but I have to be able to connect with these guys on a human level. And I think that's Tibbs' big, his big obstacle is Tibbs away from the game is a lovely person. We've worked with him at Jump. He's an awesome guy. How do we bring awesome Tibbs to work, though? That's his struggle. He's got to figure out to bring the focus and also the personality there.
But I also think that's why you hired Mark Woodson. That's why you hired Kenny Payne. That's why you put together a staff with Johnny Bryant and guys like that, so that you have, for anything that may be miscommunicated or not understood from the coach to the player, you got great people there that can communicate what was meant, and that way guys can keep moving forward and getting better.
Yeah, and I think that, teach those young guys to be pros, right? Like, I think that's the biggest obstacle he has. Real quick on Billy D in Chicago, you got anything on them?
I think they're young. He's going to get them playing his style of game, and he's going to make all those young kids better basketball players.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thanks to Coach Fizz. Thanks to Amin. Jump returns tomorrow on ESPN. Rachel.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.